Did you ever have a conversation with a toxic person that just seemed to go over and over and over? Like, it didn't seem like you could narrow down the point of the whole conversation. Instead, it felt like it kept going and going and going. Kind of like the Energizer Bunny, just never stopped. But the problem is there was no resolution, there was no clarity. And I want to bring up today conversations with a narcissist, but circular. How these things keep happening over and over and over again. Maybe you're in a toxic relationship today and you don't know what to do. If this video resonates with you, then I want you to reach out for help. Go to rawmotivations.com/breakthrough for us to be able to talk and be able to see how can I actually help you liberate yourself mentally and emotionally from the toxic relationship. Whether you're with a narcissist or not doesn't really matter. It just matters, is this person toxic? Is he actually caring for you, or is he treating you awful? Why don't we get clear about that first, and then let's move forward in your healing and in your development. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, like, rate, review, share the podcast, share the video. Would love to be able to help you out any way that we can. Okay, when we're talking through this aspect of dealing with a narcissist, okay, so we got a narcissist here, and I want you to consider when you have a conversation. Okay, we have this conversation that's happening, and typically what's going on is you're like, hey, I want this to be able to lead me to a place. It's not even showing up, is it? There we go. I want this to actually lead me to a place of getting to a resolution. Okay, let's just say we want to have a resolution here. This is the end result. So you caught him in something. You're like, hey, here's a triggering moment. I have this trigger to produce this conversation. And inside this conversation, the end goal is having a resolution, right? Like, that seems like common sense, seems normal, seems understandable. This is what you actually want. The problem is when you're dealing with a narcissist, he's like, hey, I do not want to go towards this resolution. This is not the fun place, okay? Because the resolution has this piece of accountability. And inside this accountability, he understands, hey, he'll actually understand that there'll be some guilt associated with it. There'll also be shame. Narcissist is like, hey, all of this right here, this equals death. Sounds dramatic, but that's what the narcissist thinks. Like, this will kill me if this actually happens. So let's avoid this. So as a result, the narcissist is like, hey, we got to figure out how do we actually avoid the resolution? How do we actually avoid accountability, guilt, shame? How do we run away from it? So typically it's like, well, let's set up this roadblock. Okay. And this roadblock is meant to spiral you out into something else. So this roadblock is going to be, let's just say, for instance, it's going to be an accusation. Okay, an accusation. And we'll use cheating because that's the easiest one. And I relate to that because that was part of my story and what I help people break free from. So let's have a conversation. You've got this trigger, okay? You caught him cheating. Okay, so you're like, hey, we need to sit down and we need to have a conversation, right? Like, we need to actually talk about this because I'm not in this relationship for you to go around cheating on me. So we need to have a conversation. So you sit down, you have a conversation. Now, that conversation should lead to the resolution, but the problem is he throws his roadblock. And the roadblock here is his accusation. What's the accusation? The accusation is you are cheating. And you're like, wait a second, like, I'm not cheating. And what this does is it moves you down into a place where you have to be defensive. Now, before you get defensive about being defensive, I want you to understand that's logical. It makes sense. Like, you haven't been cheating, so of course you're going to be defensive of like, no, I'm not cheating. Okay, but I need you to understand the narcissist wants this. He's like, if I make you on the offense, if I make you on the defense, then you're not going to pay attention to what's actually going on. That's really what it is. Okay, it's playing this smoke and mirrors of, can I distract you from the actual problem so that we don't have to deal with the problem? So what happens is you're dealing with this and you have this conversation. He throws this roadblock of like, wait a second, I'm going to accuse you of something. And then what happens is you move to a place of defense. Okay, this makes sense. I'm not bashing on you because you're defensive. Okay, this is logical that you would do this. He knows this. This is why he's triggering you to have this accusation to go to defensiveness. Okay, but then what happens is it moves on the other side and he has to be able to do something to be like, she's super defensive. Now it's almost like this piece of like where he accepts you to be able to bring you back. Have you seen this before? Like, what happens is, here, let's put it this way again. Let's bring you back up here. And there has to be this other piece that changes here. And this is like acceptance. Or I'll even put forgiveness, but it's not really forgiveness, okay? But the narcissist is like, oh, okay, listen, I forgive you for what you're doing. Like, okay, I get it. Like, you're super defensive. Like, we'll just call it what it is. Okay? I cheated on you. You caught me. You cheated on me. You say you didn't, but it's whatever. Let's just move past this. Okay? And the whole idea is like, let's see, how do we actually get you to move past the situation that he created? You see, he created all of this over here, like all of this like stuff. He's like, hey, let me see, what can I do to create these issues so that you have to get defensive? And then you get defensive, and then he's like, whoa, like, you're super defensive right now. You need to calm down. Like, you need to like check your attitude. You need to get into therapy because you're super triggered right now. Maybe you need to work on yourself because I'm just showing up like as me, and you're going off the deep end. Understand, a lot of times narcissists will manufacture your emotions, will try to get you to believe and to act and to feel a certain way so that you respond in a negative way. And when you respond in a negative way, then that is like fuel for the narcissist. One, it's like supply. And then two, it's fuel for the narcissist because he's like, oh, gotcha. Because then he's figured out, now that I actually got you under my control, now that I actually got you to a place where, oh, I've got you in the right spot, now I can bring you back to quote unquote accept you. Have you seen this before? If you've seen part of this cycle in your life with like the narcissist and like circular in the conversational tone, type in circular down below. Or just cycle. Circular, I'd probably misspell, so that's totally fine. Just type in cycle. Because I need you to see and understand here that there's a cycle that a narcissist walks you through in order to keep you on the defense and to keep you distracted. Now, let's look back at what I'm drawing here. And if you're listening on the podcast, sorry, it's on YouTube and it's drawn. Okay, but when we're looking at this here, he has this accusation, okay? Now, let's bring it up here. He's got this accusation right here. This is what's going on. And then with his accusation, he's then moving down to a place where you're defensive. Okay, like this defensiveness piece is happening. Then we actually see over here, then we have to move into a place of acceptance. Okay, where the narcissist is saying, like, let me actually accept you. Let me actually bring you back into the conversation. And then the whole goal is, like, let me actually move past it. Have you seen this? Oftentimes the narcissist will try to make sure that you're moving past it. Now, the problem is, move past, and then you're like, well, wait a second. Okay, there's this moment of, like, a light bulb moment. Okay, there's this moment of, like, wait a second. What about the original conversation? And you get triggered because you're like, wait a second, we never dealt with the cheating. And what this does is it starts you back on the path of, wait a second, we need to have this conversation. Like, we need to actually talk here and deal with this to be like, hey, this is a problem that's still going on, so we need to talk through this. So you step back into the conversation only to get to the same thing. This time it might be different. He might not do an accusation. He might go off of like the privacy. Like, oh, you're invading my privacy now. Oh, you just want to know all about me. Oh, you want to control me. Like, you name it. Narcissist then steps into this of like, how do I actually manipulate the conversation? I want you to take a look at this again. The whole point here, okay, is that there's this block. Okay, there's this main block here that doesn't let you get to the resolution. You never resolve a conversation with a toxic person when the toxic person is at fault. Do you get this? I'm going to write it down. Okay? When a toxic person is at fault, you will never resolve the conversation. Like, I wrote that down because I want you to see it and understand it to a degree of understanding just this whole piece, that this is not going to change. When a toxic person is at fault, you'll never resolve the conversation. So the question is, how often are you trying to get this conversation resolved? How long has this been going on where you're trying to fix it, resolve it, stop it, get to a place where you're just like, please, just listen to me, just understand. And the thing is, the narcissist will continue to do stuff long-term to keep you stuck. We talked about this before. I need you to understand, the narcissist wants to keep you stuck. If you're stuck, then you stay. If you stay, then he's got you as supply. If you're supplied, then you're subject to him, your servant. Narcissists are looking to, how do I keep you stuck long-term? Great way is in the conversation where you hold him accountable, you never get to a resolution. So as a result, you're continually having the same conversation over and over and over again. How many of you have had the same conversation over and over and over again? Because I need you to see this is going to happen until you realize that you can change it. The question is if you're going to actually change it. Because oftentimes it's easier to sell yourself into the lie that it'll get better, it'll change, he'll eventually figure it out. It's just a communication issue when nothing changes and everything stays the same. How long are you going to stay in this relationship if you keep having these circular conversations with no resolution, but you feel better in the moment because he's resolved the problem that he created between you and him, but not the problem that he created by his own decisions? You see the difference? I'm hoping you see the difference, and I'm hoping this just resonates with you. If you're listening to the podcast, like, rate, review, just share it. If you're listening on YouTube, leave a comment down below. If anybody wants help with this, please go to rawmotivations.com. Would love to be able to help you move forward in your healing, growth, and development. But you need to reach out.